I really like the Loomis method for drawing faces, but after gushing and telling you guys about how it works in my last video, some people popped up saying that they were not a fan of it. And I get why that is. So let's talk about it. Hi guys, my name starts with an M. Yes, that's the joke, and you've seen the title, so let's just clear things up. In my last video, I gave you guys a look at the Loomis method and explained basically the gist of it. I really like this method, mostly because it's so geometrical. Now, in case you're only familiar with the Loomis method on a very surface level, or you have only seen the Loomis method exclusively on weird YouTube thumbnails talking about it, it's basically this method to draw a head that has this circle on the sides. Pretty sure most of you have seen this method around somewhere. This Loomis method is very closely orientated to the human skull, and the human skull is not a perfect circle, in fact. So you would obviously have to draw your head the very same way in the Loomis method by cutting off the sides of the circle. And from there on out, the Loomis method is basically just like a Sudoku puzzle. So while drawing a basic Loomis head, everything's exactly measured. It's got its very strict ways on how everything needs to fall into place. So with the basic Loomis method, this means that you always have the brow line at this middle part, then your jawline starting at this point, your nose ending at the height of where your circle ends, and so on. That's the Loomis method explained on a very surface level. Now the thing is, this might be a way to draw a supermodel with a perfectly symmetrical and flawlessly proportioned face, but real-life people don't always have perfectly symmetrical faces. So, in actuality, most average people don't really look like this in daily life. I mean, look at me. People just have different faces, and nobody's perfect isn't just a throwaway sentence here. Regular faces just aren't perfect. People don't just have perfectly symmetrical measured faces. Besides maybe Tom Cruise. The Loomis method is an excellent template and in my opinion a very good exercise when it comes to learning realistic facial proportions. You know, maybe you've drawn anime your whole life, but you want your characters to look less like they were some random isekai protagonist from a mediocre anime made in the 2010s and more like actual real life people. Again, both are fine, it's just a preference thing. And in my last video, I said that if you want to have characters with some more realistic facial proportions, you could practice facial proportions with, for example, the Loomis method amongst others and apply features like stylized eyes to them in order to achieve this kind of middle ground between stylized and yet kind of realistic. And I say that because that's basically my workflow. I really like drawing characters like this. It just gives them this kind of 3D feeling because it's based off of real life geometry, but it's still very stylized. So the best of both worlds, in my opinion. You can still see a lot of famous mangaka and comic book artists that draw heads very closely orientated to this technique, which basically amounts to the very same thing. And I think the way that I explained this should have been kind of understandable. Taking the Loomis method as a template and applying anime features to it leads to a nice blend. I mean, that's why I animate all of my videos the way I do, for literal weeks on end sometimes, and I'm very thankful for everyone who supports them, so that all of you guys understand the gist of it a lot better. There are still people out there though who didn't really get that. Like, they're just trying to copy anime faces with anime proportions by using the Loomis method, which obviously doesn't really work out with a method that's made for real life proportioned faces. So don't do that, please. Like I just said, the Loomis method is very closely orientated to a realistic human skull. So wanting to draw heavy stylized anime characters with this method just doesn't work out. But the Loomis method itself also does have its weak points and reasons why people critique it. Mainly, and that's something that I personally noticed as well, is that every face drawn strictly by the Loomis method kinda looks the same every time, because geometrically they are all perfectly measured, so it kinda makes sense that always drawing every head strictly this way would lead to a literal same face syndrome. Okay. I don't know if this is gonna sound weird or something, but I traveled a lot by train lately and I sometimes try to draw some strangers there so I can use the time I'm spending on train rides with practicing. And it's always so wild how different people have wildly different face shapes and proportions. Your basic Loomis head is perfectly measured and your features are always perfectly spaced apart. But with real life people, and yes, even conventionally attractive people, this is rarely the case. So you would always have to decide proportions on a case-by-case basis, because faces always look unique. It doesn't matter what ethnicity or origin you stem from. I mean, there is one ethnicity where pretty much everyone does look the same, but let's be real, we're not gonna talk about them. And people also noticed the same thing after my last video. Some DMing me and some just asking me on stream that they tried out the Loomis method before, but they always feel like the faces just always look the same, or the method just doesn't work with longer or broader faces. And by the way, this doesn't only count for actual real-life photos, but especially for fictional characters. And especially for fictional characters from One Piece. So yeah, sorry, no one-size-fits-all method. You still have to measure proportions on a case-by-case basis when copying people or characters that don't have a medium-sized Loomis face. Alright, now just so that everyone gets it, using the Loomis method as a base or just a means of practicing faces and proportions is great. You just have to apply the features, proportions and stylization to it so that it doesn't look the very same every time and more like your desired outcome. If you want to copy someone's face or just want to make a face very unique, you have to adjust the proportions accordingly. What you should avoid is having a person or character that obviously doesn't have a face that's proportioned like an actual real-life person, but drawing them with the Loomis method anyway. I do not think I need to elaborate on this further. If you just like to draw heavy stylized characters like cartoon or anime, that's totally cool, but the Loomis method probably isn't the first method I would use here. Now this leaves one question. Would you like an actual tutorial on the Loomis method, like from start to finish? I really missed a poll feature on YouTube videos from back in the day, but you can just comment if you would like a tutorial on that anyway. So yeah, you can just vote for that, but before I'm making a video on the Loomis method, I need to make that video on how to publish your own comic book and manga, because it's been way too long since I've been teasing that. Well then, my name is Marcel, and I'll see you guys next time.